When people think of the guillotine, they usually picture the French Revolution at its bloodiest. They think of kings, queens, aristocrats, maybe even Marie Antoinette. But before any of them climbed the scaffold, there was another man. A man whose name most people have never heard. His name was Nicolas Jacques Pelletier, and while history has largely forgotten the life he lived, it has never forgotten the way he died. Welcome back to Meals Down Alive for, the podcast where true crime, dark history, conspiracy, and food collide. I'm your host, Jody Breton, and every week we serve up the stories that are as disturbing as they are fascinating, paired with a meal inspired by the chaos. So grab a plate, lock your doors, and let's dig in. Today we'll be making a black cherry and red wine tart with mascarpone. Little is actually known about Peltier's early life. Historians believe he was born sometime around 1756, but records are scarce. Like many lower class Parisians of the era, he disappeared into history until his crimes finally brought him into the public eye. By the early 1790s, France was already changing. The monarchy was weakening. The revolution had begun. Old traditions were being questioned, including how criminals were punished. For centuries, executions depended largely on who you were. Commoners might be hanged, broken on the wheel, or tortured before death. Nobles considered more honorable were often granted a swift beheading by sword. It was justice divided by social class, and that didn't sit well with many revolutionaries. One physician and politician, Joseph Ignace Guillotine, argued that every citizen should face the same punishment regardless of wealth or birth. More importantly, executions should be as quick and painless as possible. His proposal eventually led to the adoption of the mechanical decapitation device designed by surgeon Anton Louis and built by German engineer Tobias Schmidt. Ironically, Guillotine himself neither invented the machine nor wanted it named after him. Before the machine could prove itself, it needed someone to use it on. Unfortunately for Nicolas Jacques Pelletier, that someone would be him. On the night of October 14th, 1791, Pelletier and several accomplices attacked a man walking around Rue Bourbon Villeneuve in Paris. The victim was beaten, stabbed, and robbed of his wallet along with several hundred livres worth of assignat, the paper currency of the revolutionary France. Some later accounts exaggerated the crime into murder or sexual assault, but surviving court records primarily describe a violent robbery and assault. Pelletier wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind. While some of his accomplices escaped, he was captured almost immediately. He was brought before the courts, found guilty, and sentenced to death. Normally, that sentence would have been carried out quickly. Instead, Pelletier waited, not because there was uncertainty over his guilt, but because France was still deciding how it wanted to kill him. The National Assembly had approved the new execution machine in March of 1792. Officials believed it represented equality. Every condemned person would now die the same way. No more distinctions between rich and poor. No more executioners struggling to land a clean blow with a sword. The machine promised speed, consistency, and in theory, mercy. Before it was unveiled to the public, the executioner Charles Henry Sanson personally supervised its testing, first on straw bales, then on sheep and calves, finally on human corpses. Once everyone was satisfied that the angled blade worked cleanly, France prepared for its first public demonstration. April 25th, 1792, Place de Grève in Paris. By early afternoon, crowds had gathered out of pure curiosity. This wasn't just another execution. People were coming to witness a new invention. Officials anticipated enormous crowds and even requested extra National Guardsmen to keep order. The scaffold had been erected outside the Hotel de Ville. The guillotine itself stood painted a striking red. Workers had spent hours assembling it before the growing audience. Finally, Pelletier was led onto the platform. There was no lengthy speech, no dramatic final struggle, Executioner Charles Henry Sanson secured Pelletier beneath the blade. The release was triggered, the heavy angled blade fell, and within a fraction of a second, it was over. Nicolas Jacques Pelletier became the first human being ever executed by guillotine. What happened next surprised everyone. The crowd hated it, not because they found it too violent, but because they found it too quick. Public executions in 18th century France had often been lengthy spectacles. Some lasted many minutes, sometimes much longer. Crowds expected drama, suffering, a performance. Instead, the execution was almost instantaneous. Some spectators reported shouting for the return of the old gallows because they felt cheated out of a spectacle they had come to see. It's one of history's strangest reactions. The machine had accomplished exactly what reformers intended. It reduced suffering. Yet many members of the public were disappointed because there wasn't enough of it. Pelletier himself quickly faded from public attention. His crimes were relatively ordinary, his life unremarkable. His death, that was another story. Within months, France descended further into political chaos. The monarchy collapsed, the revolutionary tribunal expanded, and the guillotine, originally envisioned as a humane and equal method of execution, became an instrument of mass political violence. Soon, famous names followed Pelletier. Thousands of ordinary citizens did as well. King Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, George Danton, even Maximilien Robespierre, one of the architects of the Reign of Terror, would eventually die beneath the same blade he had helped make infamous. Today, Nicolas Jacques Pelletier occupies an unusual place in history. He wasn't the most dangerous criminal. He didn't change the course of the revolution. Most people couldn't tell you anything about the robbery that condemned him. Yet his name survives because history chose him to mark the new beginning of a new era. He became the first chapter in a story that would ultimately claim tens of thousands of lives. A man remembered not for what he did, but because he happened to stand beneath a brand new machine on the day history decided to pull the lever. I hope you guys enjoyed this mini episode, guys. I know I certainly enjoyed this red wine cherry tart, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.